This is Analytics with Asa, hosted on the FF Faceoff YouTube channel. Today, I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Colin Dunphy. Colin, how you doing, my man?
Excellent, Asa. So excited to be back again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who aren't aware, we've been part of a series pretty much going over every NFL division, the things they've done in free agency, and based on that, what we would do in an NFL mock draft simulation in order to address these sort of needs. And today we kind of have an interesting spin on it because while I consider myself an NFL person, I don't consider myself an NFL draft expert. But I do think you know yourself and myself are a little more knowledgeable on the financial side, the analytical side. So it'll be fun to kind of go over that.
Really looking forward to this. Yeah.
Yes. So before we do that, we've kept every intro in the series so far discussing music. And today I wanted to put a little bit of a spin on that. And that is going to be music and fashion, something we talked about previous episode with Colin. I'm a big fashion fan. I know you are as well. So I want to cover the most influential or perhaps the best dressed musicians that come to your mind right now. So based on that question alone, do you have any that are popping in your head right now?
I have to choose someone that's like a musician that's close to me, and especially like I was thinking of someone that I've gotten back into more recently, and that's Bob Marley. Really big when I was growing up. I have two older brothers, and like one of my earliest memories as a family was like driving to Rehoboth. You know, I'm from DC, and so we would go out to Rehoboth for summer vacations, and like Bob Marley was the only thing that my whole family could agree on when we were like piled into the station wagon. So yeah, that's a big part of it. I like his vibe. He's like just super authentic. Mm-hmm. And, you know, in terms of like the Derek Guy stuff with like social language, fashion being a form of social language. Yeah, I think he's saying a lot with the way he dresses. And I try and bring some of that authenticity with the denim and just kind of the vibrant colors. And just like really worn in and loved stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And just to give a little bit of a visual here, yeah, Bob Marley is not only a great musician, but he's also great at dressing. Like you mentioned, the whole social language aspect. He just, to me, really conveys authenticity. And I love the loose fitting stuff. I think the jeans wear perfectly with the way that he's dressing in the shirt as well. And like you mentioned with the denim, I think that it looks amazing. And yeah, I think that's a great pick.
Yeah, I love how you put the flare jeans look like super modern now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's like, you know, every few years, there's some sort of trend that existed in the past that kind of comes back. But yeah, I think Bob Marley is a great pick there. One guy that is definitely not nearly as popular as Bob Marley is someone who I actually saw in concert recently. He's the lead singer of a band called Loathe, and his name is Kadeem France. And he's known for a lot of like tank tops that he wears on stage. He dresses very almost formal for the type of genre that he plays, but I can show what he looks like here. Yeah, he's great at rocking like different turtlenecks. Leather jackets is a big thing that he likes to wear. And what I find most impressive is that despite all of these like really well put together outfits, he's someone who is also very energetic on stage. He plays a type of metal music that really gets people going. And he can have all that energy despite wearing like these really nice things. So I like Kadeem France, the way that he dresses a lot.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love that style. That's something I've been trying to get in a little more myself, like a little more refined, you know, which is a segue into like my next pick, who is lesser known, but like similarly authentic maybe to Bob Marley, like especially with his hairstyle. He's kind of shaggy. His name is Sebastien Tellier, and he's like a French Tellier, and he's kind of like this suave, sexy kind of disco dude, and sometimes his stuff is a little too much, but sometimes it's perfect. So and he has just like a more you know, elevated, I think is the word. I hear on my girlfriend's YouTubes. And you know, so like some of his like monotone stuff, very sleek, and modern. So I thought that would be a nice contrast to Bob Marley.
Yeah, 100%. And there's someone who a pick that it's almost so obvious that you almost don't want to make it, but Prince is someone who everyone talks about as like a complete fashion icon. And kind of like you mentioned with Tellier, he's someone who almost dresses so avant-garde, so out there that it's almost a little bit too much. But one, he's Prince, so he's allowed to do it. And two, he's almost like a truth tester for fashion because he's pushing the boundary so hard that sometimes it doesn't always work, but because he's willing to push that boundary, he's really driving like the influence of his style forward. And he's notorious for the purple, and I know there's a little bit of a tie with him in Minnesota, but yeah, I think he's obviously a fashion icon, almost so obvious that I didn't want to make the pick, but I feel like you have to if it's Prince.
I love it, especially Minnesota connection.
No, 100%. So if you have any more picks, we can rattle those off. If not, I'm ready to jump NFC stuff.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So let's clean that up. All right, so as fun as fashion was, we are here to talk about the NFC East, not the NFC least anymore. They're much, much better than they were a few years ago. Why don't you kind of give me a macro level view of this division? What happened in free agency? If you have a favorite move, we can rattle that off. What would be an elevator pitch to if someone asks, okay, what happened? I missed free agency. Describe it really quick. What happened for the NFC East?
Yeah, I think things are getting real for like all participants. The Commanders, I'll start with them. I think they surprised themselves and took a step forward with Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel. I think those are like the two biggest moves that come to mind. And yeah, it's going to be a big test to see if they can follow through on that, like increase in investment and risk. Dak Prescott, I mean, like it's getting realer and real with his $60 million salary and, trying to sign Micah Parsons. They're going through a lot of changes. And so I think they're kind of just like coming home to roost. The Giants, I mean, like I feel like they could be getting better, but still probably like it's like the consequences of like being real. Like the things have come back to roost, and then I mean just the Eagles. They're the best, and I just love like getting into analytics at this time and having like this like banner of analytic thought and process, like in our division and, doing so well. It's just great to look at. So like whenever I'm out, like, what could the Commanders be doing now? Like, let's just look at the Eagles and see what they're doing. And that'd be a good start.
Yeah, no, I think you put it perfectly. And what's so interesting about this division, in my opinion, is it almost seems like each team is on a different stage of like the competitive timeline. You have the Eagles who have been fully actualized. They won the Super Bowl last year, and their roster, I mean, they lost some guys in free agency, but to me, they have not gotten that much worse, and they still have a ton of draft capital they can throw at problems, which Howie is amazing at doing. The Commanders were so much better than people expected last season. They 100% hit on their quarterback. And like you mentioned before in our last episode, they have a lot of needs that we are going to have to cover, but they had the draft capital. They have the space to actually do it. And so, you look at Laramie Tunsil getting traded for, and he is a rock solid left tackle. He's not the best in the league, but I think he was like third or fourth best in pressure rate among all left tackles, which whenever you're going from whoever it was before to Laramie Tunsil, like that is a huge upgrade for the Commanders. And I think that was probably the best move that was made throughout this entire division. But you also have teams like the Cowboys who are kind of competing. I'm not quite sure. I think you put it perfectly with Dak. Like he's getting paid a lot of money and you're going to have to pay him. He's a very good quarterback, but it's almost like you have all of these other needs around you, and they just really got hit with the injury bug last season. And so, I mean, I'm expecting them to be a lot better because Dak Prescott hopefully would not get hurt this season. But yeah, and then there's the Giants, and the Giants are, on the cusp of different things happening with their front office, barring something very significant changing. But there's some good parts in place. Like Dexter Lawrence is one of the best defensive players in football. Malik Neighbors was an absolute home run of a draft pick. but there's a lot of other needs they're going to have as well. And so I think based on this draft, we're probably going to have to maybe attack quarterback depending on how the draft board falls for us. But yeah, there's a lot going on. Very, very fun division to cover. And I think you laid the groundwork perfectly.
Thank you. I'm so excited to get into this.
All right. So if you are ready, I am ready to go team by team, and we will cover. Oh, wait, let's see if I can fix this. All right, cool. And we'll cover what's happened so far in free agency, and then we'll put our little analytical spin on it. And then based on all of that, we will do a mock draft. So let's start with the Giants. These are the moves they have made so far, and there's a lot of names out there, but perhaps the most notable are the two quarterbacks they signed. So Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson are the two guys that they have kind of, I guess, attacked in the aggregate. A name that I came up with for them is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Let's Ride. It would be their nickname. But aside from that, do you have any moves that they made that you think make their team better, maybe make their team worse, or are an indicator of what we should do in the draft?
Yeah, I thought the Paulson Adebo pickup was pretty interesting. He's making $17 million a year. I didn't realize that. He's coming from the Saints. I remember looking at him when the Washington Commanders selected Benjamin St-Juste. Like a little, if I recall, like a few picks around that area in third round. There's similar big corners. Debo's had much better career as judged by this contract. I think they're looking maybe. I think that's important because Debo is older. I think he had some injury issues, if I recall, and we're not. He's isn't coming out of his fourth year, so not like old by other contract members, like other positions, but like I do think corner like ages quickly. So I wouldn't be surprised if they targeted another position, another player of a similar profile. I just thought that was interesting, before we get into free agency, or before we get into the draft. Like sometimes, like a free agent need that's addressed, I think can signal like their values and maybe that they want to do it again. Fill that same need in the draft, because Deonte Banks has been struggling, and although he's 6'2" and big as well, I just don't think he would prevent them from adding to the position. So that was an addition that caught my eye as to how they want to build this team going forward.
Yeah. There was a lot of controversy around their signing of Javon Holland because they let Xavier McKinney walk last season in free agency, and then they spend big on a safety with Javon Holland. Now, I do think that misses the point a little bit because they do play very different roles despite both being safeties. But I do think it's interesting that they're now all of a sudden willing to invest a lot in their secondary, which is probably an indicator of the fact that it's not really good right now. And so I think that's a pretty solid move from the Giants. The rest of the guys are largely just depth pieces. James Hudson III, Roy Robertson Harris. All of these guys are really just filling minor needs without splashing too big to, I guess, strap themselves in the future when it comes to financials. But yeah, I think there's a lot going on with the Giants, and they still have a lot of needs to address. So let's transition a bit into some work that you did that relates to analytics and cap situations and draft capital as a whole. And that is this chart here. So for someone who's never heard of top 5 APY, why don't you kind of briefly explain that and then explain how this chart relates to what we should do in the draft?
So thanks for putting this up. I'm really excited to show this. It's a concept I've been like working around with for like the past year or so since reading The Drafting Stage by Jason Fitzgerald and Brad Spielberger. And they introduced the concept of top 5 APY or T5 APY. And so what they used it to do was to establish the top of the market for each position. And then for any player at that position, you can then compare them to the top of the market. So you are putting positions in like value regards to each other. And then within positions, you're putting those players in their value in regard to the top. So It's very useful for me. I just kind of find like myself going back to it in the way I think about the value that veterans may provide in comparison to um, rookies, because what Brad Spielberger and Jason Fitzgerald did with this information was determine the expected contract value of players after they finish their rookie contract. So it's what that specifically is, though, is a percentage of the top 5 APY. So like if you're the first pick in the draft, they just set it so that you're assumed to get 100% of the top 5 APY of the position that you're drafted at. And that number goes down according to like how quickly the pick value goes down. So like from 3,000 points down to like, I think it's like 1,500 points. Basically, you're losing like half the value in the first round. So like the first pick in the second round is like half the value of that first pick, and would get about, that player would then be about 50% of the top 5 APY that you could expect them to provide. Now, they're not going to provide that player. Jason Fitzgerald is quick to point out that in the first year, that player is probably not going to provide that value. We are talking about second contract values, and we're extrapolating that back. But you can use it as a gauge to say, like, the second year, there should probably be something similar to that. And if not the third or fourth. So it gives us, it's not a perfect gauge, nothing is, but it gives us a good understanding of like what teams are expecting. So I use it in the context of investment. And it doesn't mean that the player's performance will meet that expectations. It's just, again, it's just saying like, what is the team possibly expecting? And I think that's a huge part of all this. Like, it's part of my process and assumption. Like, I don't think what I think necessarily cares so much nearly as what the team thinks. And like that goes back to like fantasy football. Like, we know that, like, you can be in a certain situation and have things go for you. So yeah, I created this chart to hopefully give people who are going into the draft an understanding of position value. And so that's what this T5 APY, the gray bars, do. And so like I organized it and ordered it by decreasing max value. So like the most important value or most valuable positions in terms of top 5 APY are on the left of the screen. So you have quarterback at like just under 60 million, wide receiver is over 30 million. And, we see that that it goes down and down and down all the way to the right of the screen, where you have like running backs and centers. And we know that they make like around $13, $15 million. And that's the average of the top 5 APY. And so that gives us like a baseline of like that's how I think about the draft value. And like, disclaimer here is it's definitely focused on cash value. That is not the only thing to be considering when we talk about position value. Access to a player is a big part of that, and I got into that with a study I did recently. So this isn't like the only way to talk about position value, but like it's the first way I think about position value. And so, yeah, just to finish the thought, then I guess the gray bars represent like the max value, and the blue value bars represent like the average APY of that player. And your eyes are then saying, oh, that looks like 20% of that bar. And that looks like 50% of that bar. So you're not actually doing there's no T5 APY percentage that's happening here. Like your brain is doing that. And I think like people, that's something that humans are really good at, like being able to discern proportions from visuals and things like that. So that's my long answer there. I appreciate you helping me there.
Yeah, no, I love it. What I find so interesting about this whole like draft versus free agency discussion is that in free agency, it's really more like an open market where there's players and teams that are competing with each other. And because of that, there are influences that this market is going to have on like the price of a player. And so often it's very difficult to really get that much, I guess, surplus value in free agency, because you're typically paying market price or sometimes more with a guy like Milton Williams when there's some sort of bidding war going on. With the draft, it's really more of a closed market. And so because of that, there's not a lot of competition out there. There's not this guy comparing his price to another player in order to drive his value up, because the rookie contracts are set in stone. And because of that, you can find this like immense surplus value, like you mentioned, with the first overall pick. The guy may not even be that good, but if he's playing quarterback and he's playing at a $25 million level, that is immense surplus value, even if a $25 million quarterback is not that amazing. And so I think this chart is a great way of putting it, that one, the Giants do have a lot of needs we need to address, most notably quarterback, but two, they also are not finding that many, I guess, efficiencies in the market. Hence the reason why they're not as good as a team like the Eagles or like the Commanders.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. There's a lot of holes, and they have a lot of work to do.
100%. So instead of really harking on the depth chart, I think what would be more interesting here is we jump straight to the mock draft simulator now, and then we can cover where we can find these efficiencies. We can break out the old Spielberger Fitzgerald chart if we have to, in order to see what we should do in a certain spot in order to maximize that value. So I am ready when you are to get going with our first mock draft.
Love it.
All right. So Giants are picking at 3 overall. We're going to be doing a 7-round mock draft. And once we get towards those later rounds, we may not know the players too well, but that is okay, because a lot of that is randomness as well. But we're going to keep the settings roughly the same just to keep for consistency's sake. But I want to ask you this first. Should we go quarterback here if Shedeur is there?
No. I trade back and risk it.
Yeah. We are going to go the old Fitzgerald Spielberger route. Trading back is probably going to be the best way to pick up value. And it doesn't particularly matter too much because Ward and Shedeur are both taken in the first 2 picks. Travis Hunter is very good.
Travis Hunter's there. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Let's see what value we can get first. So Vegas wants to trade up from 6. The Bears to 10, Commanders 29, and the Titans 35. Let's see. I'll leave it up to you because Travis Hunter's so good, and he tackles 2 needs. I do think if we want to keep it towards the thought exercise, we can consider trading back just to show how much value we can get. But it is up to you, my friend, on what we would.
I say just take him.
Yeah. I mean, it's Travis Hunter. He's so good. And he's in many people's boards is the best cornerback and the best receiver and that's available. And that just speaks a lot to the talent that he has.
Right, I mean, wide receiver, if I could just briefly, I mean, I think it's super valuable. The study that Ben Brown and Judah Fortgang did a few years ago on PFF on how important they are to explosive plays has really opened my mind to the value of wide receivers. And so I think it's I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah. And in terms of APY as well, they're either number 2 or number 3 in the entire NFL among positions behind quarterback. And so that just speaks to the value that the league places on receivers. And, if the Giants are getting arguably the best receiver prospect and arguably the best corner prospect, that is very good for the Giants, which they have not had as much good as we have hoped in recent years. So here, I think could be a little bit more of a trade back opportunity because the 49ers are interested in trading up from 43 to 34. So this is kind of an indicator of how the actual mock draft simulator works versus how we can really find value here. Let me ask you this. There's a lot of emphasis, at least in the book, about 2-for-1 trades. So, getting 2 draft picks for 1 draft pick. Do you think it's better to then maybe try to swap picks and go 43.75 for 34.99, or we just go 43, 100, and 113 in order to get 3 picks for the price of 1?
So is the question 2 for 1 or 2 for 2 kind of?
Yeah. It's do you think it's better to go 34 and getting 3 draft picks or doing a pick swap to get a little bit more in the middle rounds as opposed to getting all of these later picks?
Got you. I would prefer the more picks.
Yeah.
The lowest pick there is 113. I need to get my glasses when we get a break here. I'm still like, I just turned like 42, and so like my eyes started failing, and like I'm still like reluctant to like carry them everywhere.
You're good.
So 113. I mean, yeah, I prefer the more bat swings
Yeah.
because I accept that the draft is a luck driven process, and like that is my mantra. Um, it's different, like, but of course Adam Peters, like, they didn't do that last year. Last year, like, I thought they should have. I mean, in a lot of ways, like, they had a very depleted roster, so I would have expected them to favor more multiple picks, but like, that's just an isolated event. I mean, they may not have had those options, and in which case, they just took the best offers that were available, and those were swaps. So like, I guess that's to say, like, swaps are okay. But yeah, I think the draft is a luck driven process for sure.
Yeah. So I think it would be kind of a fun thing to bust out the old calculator here and just compare the value that we may be getting if we were to trade 1 for 3 versus the whole 2 for 2 swap. And one thing I do want to say is that I do think teams that are interested in trading up, it's probably in the best interest to do the swap sort of thing, because you're getting more, you're not losing as many chances to draft players. And while once you get in the later rounds, your chances of drafting really good players are lower. They're still better than 0 that would occur if you were to be trading, like 3 picks for 1.
Eric Eager did a study on that, and or talked about it, and then Stephen Patton and I did a study on that covered that, and found that was true.
Yeah, that's really interesting. All right, so I am doing some calculator math while we were talking. So based on the Fitzgerald-Spielberger chart, you would be getting 2,364 points of value, and you'd be giving up 1,213 points of value if you're doing the 3 for 1 trade. And so let me do the other one and see what we can do.
That's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah. And it just speaks to the fact that, like, a lot of teams don't value these like middle round draft picks. And it's something that they talk about in the book, that with the old Jimmy Johnson chart, there's very, very little emphasis on these picks, despite the fact that you can get some pretty quality players in those like 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds.
Totally agree.
Yeah. All right. Let's 34.
I mean, and the Giants should really value those mid-round picks more than other teams.
Yeah, because it's like, when you have so many holes, you should be throwing as many darts as you can at the board. And especially in the defensive end, like you mentioned before, with the whole like weak link versus strong link system, the defense is typically a very weak link based system. And you already have Dexter Lawrence, who can be like your anchor for that defense, but you still have needs at secondary, you still have needs at linebacker, and addressing those is going to be a good way of getting value. And the best way of doing that is by trading back. All right.
Totally. I also love number 34 while you're working there.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like 34 because it is the first couple picks in the second round have a lower percentage, or they have a lower contract value than the last few picks of the first round. So if you're looking at a line on a graph, it just dips, and the player value doesn't really dip. So you have an increase in surplus value just because, from like picks the 31 to like 33, that little difference. So, and like the people overblow the fifth year option. It's especially because it's guaranteed now. It's just not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, in my opinion, once you're picking towards the later half of that first round, it's so much less likely you're going to be using that 5th year option, like you said. And, people make that case for, we should trade up and get that 5th year option for a quarterback. But it's like, if you're drafting a quarterback at 32, the chances of actually wanting to use that person's fifth-year option are not really that high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So back of the napkin math is done. So if we were to be doing the 3-for-1 trade, the one that you suggested, we would be getting 2,364 points of value while giving up 1,213. So about 1,100 net points that we would be gaining. If we do the 2-for-2 trade, we're getting 1,900 points of value, giving up 1,800 points of value. So it's actually just astounding that in my head, I'm thinking, oh, okay, if we do the 2-for-1, we're getting a higher pick at this spot, and that may be good. But whenever you think about it, like in the broader scope, 3-for-1 is almost always better. So if you are cool with it, I think offering this 3-for-1 trade would be very much in the Giants' interest, and they do accept it. So we are getting immense value there. And at this point, we're at the 43 spot. They have a few needs. Obviously, quarterback is going to be the first one, but they have needs at tackle. Their defensive interior is great with Dexter Lawrence, but I think Omar Norman-Lott is a great 3-tech, someone who is really, really productive. 88 true pass rush grade for PFF, 18.9% pass rush win rate. While the exercise is more so about the value we'd be getting in the draft, I think this would be a great player to address the Giants' direct needs.
I love addressing that position. The top 5 APY graphic that I showed was has a big drop off after Dexter Lawrence. So I think you could add like 2 defensive tackles in this draft. Yeah. And so I love the position, and that's primarily where my focus is on. After that, my mind goes to like the big board. And like which one? So like the way I think about it in context of like analytics and scouting is like scouting kind of sets the board, and then analytics helps you work and manipulate and maybe like raise the floor so you're avoiding bad picks. But like scouting really kind of sets it. So which is all to say like which board are you using? I think like the Arif Hassan's big board has had a lot of good studies done by Jason Fitzgerald over the years that show like if teams are using that, they're probably going to be doing well. So like that's something I've tried to do in the course of this is like, but that's difficult, like because when you go on these PFF big boards, like they're quite different. And like Pro Football Network, for instance, is so like that might be the only like I have nothing to say about Omar Norman-Lott, but like somebody that I think that was coming up for me. Oh gosh.
No, you're good.
I forget his name. Yeah.
While we're covering that, this is the NFL mock draft database consensus big board, and yeah, I think it's a great idea to just see where the value lies because people tend to overthink drafts and over-scout and say stuff about, the bend that this guy has. But at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're not productive. And if teams and players and scouts, people who are doing these sort of big boards, do not see you as productive. And so, yeah, go ahead.
Well, Sam Brookhouse, I think on your interview pointed out that there was a study that showed late risers in draft time often like had a negative correlation. So like that really stuck with me. It was like, what if we just like went to the big board first? You know what I mean? Like the old one. And then, updated that to say, so I think some guy named Collins, I think he was out of Texas. He was a defensive tackle. He had a big board ranking like 45 or something. Yeah. So that's somebody I think that's been dropping in these mocks. I don't see him on this one. Yeah. But
there he is. Yeah, 58.
Yeah, it's different. Like I've been using Jack Lichtenstein's big board because it's like public and available. So that's
I mean, I think that's a great point because I look at Omar Norman-Lott and I say, oh, he has these great moves, he's this amount of productive, but like you mentioned, a lot of times we tend to overthink that a little bit. And so, yeah, I think you bring up a great point that probably indicates a better value will be for someone like a Maxwell Harrison or Savon Ravel, or one of these guys that has fallen. I don't know if Trey Amos is there. I can check right now. Yeah, Ravel is still there. Benjamin Morrison is still there.
If Ravel is still there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think all right, let's do that. And we won't go this much in depth for each pick, but I think especially when we're starting out, it's important to get value where you can. Ravel is a really productive cornerback who played for a small school. I know some people don't necessarily value that, but I do think he's immensely talented. He's really, really fast, and he's good on the consensus big board, and we're getting him at great value here.
And he's tall, and he fits the mold of like what they value already. We know that they value those players, and like yes. I don't think Deonte Banks or Paulson Adibro are going to prevent them from making that evaluation.
Agreed. All right, and then next up we have the first pick of the third round. That's going to be at 65 here, and we've already addressed cornerback. One guy I want to see if he's available. Now, this may be controversial because we did not already take a quarterback, but to talk about consensus big board, Jalen Milroe is, I think he's number 40. He's 41. And this is almost like a rock meets a hard place here because analytics tells you that if you're not taking a quarterback early, like in the first or second round, there's almost no point of doing that because it's so difficult for them to actually project out to be successful. But he is 41 on the consensus big board. He is a really athletic guy. I don't know. How do you feel about this pick?
Yeah, what comes to mind with that study, I think it was, I've seen lots of versions. I don't know which one you're referring to, but like lots of versions of like, outcomes based off of draft slot. And so like historic data is not representative, I think, where we are right now with what is valued in the NFL. And so I think like athletic quarterbacks, I think Sam Bruckhouse made a similar comment. He wants, these guys taking these positions to be athletic. So I totally agree. I think it's sneaky. What's his, Kevin Cole, was always on about Jalen Hurts pick and stuff like that. So, if it has an opportunity for surplus value, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's do it. And PFF's not going to love that grading. But frankly, I don't necessarily care whenever I think we're getting value on the consensus big board. We're getting the most valuable position in all of pro sports. And if it works out, it works out great. If it doesn't, you still have you still have Jameis Winston, you still have Russell Wilson, guys that you could end up starting for quite some time. But yeah, I think
you could maybe
Milroe
trade. You could maybe trade Milroe later on for like something.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so it's like, it's a risk, but when you're spending a third round pick, that's not the most valuable pick in the world. And to me, it's worth the reward. That the chances of it working out are not very high, but if it does work out, the value there is immense. All right, and then we have back-to-back picks here, 99, 100, and then one coming up pretty soon at 105. A lot of me and Sam's discussion was around these like late risers, like you talked about. Kyle Williams is one of those guys where, if you look at PFF rank, it's ranked 65. If you look at his average draft position, it is 108.9. So there's a big discrepancy there.
I think it's like 400 on the big board or something. I was looking at him like,
yeah, no, it's very interesting. So at this point, I think it's really just take the value where you can see it. And to address a little bit of the needs that they have, we have Travis Hunter, our wide receiver / cornerback. We have Savon Ravel, our cornerback starter potentially, and then Jalen Milroe is our potential quarterback of the future. I think here, tackle is probably going to be a good bet. Charles Grant is someone who comes to mind. And it is interesting because, not to make this all about the draft stage, the book by Fitzgerald and Spielberger, but they talk about the fact that tackles are some of the best bets you can make in these kind of midder / later rounds because, the hit rate is not super high, but it's much, much higher for tackle than it is for edge rusher or it is for cornerback or things like that. And so I think Charles Grant would be great here. And
I like that too.
Yeah.
He's 6'4".
Yeah, he's not massive for a tackle.
But they need a guard. So
Yeah,
he
they
could work.
desperately need offensive line. And just to verify, he is number 98 on the consensus big board, which we're picking at 99. So I'm perfectly cool with a one slot surplus value here.
Okay, yeah, nice.
All
Yeah,
right,
I've
next
seen him
up
as
we
high
have
as 80.
yeah, yeah. It's like in I don't know the data on this particularly, but I'm curious about if like combine fallers are something that people place an emphasis on because I mean, I think people tend to big brain things a little bit where, if some guy doesn't have this testing metric, he's all of a sudden not that good. But if you're
Mhm.
productive, I don't think that necessarily matters too much. All right. And then next up, we have 100. Um, let's see who is valuable here. We have not addressed the need at defensive tackle, so that could
Mhm.
be definitely an avenue to explore.
I like that.
Yeah, no one particularly.
Mhm.
Jamari Caldwell's solid. I think he's in the 100s for the big board. He's 130. Yeah, so don't want to reach too hard there. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think
there's
we can address that later.
players later.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see who we have available. Let's check out Anthony Belton. He's someone that he's 95 on the big board. So,
Okay.
double
Yeah.
dipping a tackle, I'm fine with that. And he's built more like an actual tackle. He's 6'6",
Mhm.
he's
There you
340.
go.
So yeah, I think he fits that pure tackle mold a little bit better.
Yeah,
His PFF grades are pretty solid. And I think he'd be pretty good value here.
I like that.
All right, and then just a few picks later, we have 105.
Nice.
Let's see what we got. We've gone pretty solid on cornerback, especially because Travis Hunter reported that he wants to play both sides of the ball, and so I don't know if he's going to be a full-time receiver or a full-time corner, but he'll definitely be good at whatever one he ends up playing most of the time.
The
Here,
Giants are good. Stacked.
yeah, this would be a very fun draft if you're getting Travis Hunter, Savon Ravel, Milroe, Grant, and then Belton. I think that would be really fun for the Giants. Yeah, it'd be very, very exciting. All right, and then next up, we have 105. I'll kind of leave this up to you if there's anyone particularly calling your name. We do have the big board that we can go off of, but at the end of the day, when you're getting in these later rounds, it also helps to just take flyers on guys you trust.
Yeah, I'll defer to your trust.
Okay.
I know they do need a tight end,
Mhm.
but when I was doing my research on this, I didn't see anyone that really jumped off to me.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I could see a linebacker
Mhm.
or another edge. I think they value that position
Mhm.
and rushing the passer. Um, but I don't know if there's anyone really. I mean, Oladejo, I don't know what to make of him because his like Jack Lichtenstein consensus big board I think was
Mhm.
pretty high.
Yeah.
So like I avoided him. I've been avoiding him, and so if he's legit like draft riser, then I would probably just go ahead and take him.
Mhm. Yeah,
But
to
yeah,
me, it looks like, at least according to the mock draft database, he looks pretty good in terms of value for the big board versus where we would be getting him. Because at least on this one, he is 69 and his peak was 67. So he's not someone who like really just shot up and then came back down.
hmm
But yeah, to me, he may be one of those later risers, but I do think it's value here, especially in the fourth round. So that is cool with me. At 113 here, honestly, despite the whole discussion we've had on Kyle Williams, he may still be worth it, at least at the later 100 spot here.
yeah, I'm cool with
He is
that.
someone who rose a lot, but yeah, he's 90 on the big
Um,
board. Yeah,
Giants do have a lot of wide receivers.
that's true.
I think Jalen Hyatt's like their number 4, and
Yeah.
so like yeah, it's just I love wide receiver value, but that's something to think about.
No, that is true. And then yeah, here we have edge mostly set up. Jamar Caldwell was like I think the 130s on the big board, and then for the fourth round though, um, I don't think we haven't really picked a defensive tackle yet.
I'd be fine with that. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And yeah, he was productive against the run. His pass rush win rate is still pretty solid. 9.3% is not amazing, but he definitely could be like some sort of backup nose tackle. Or if you really want to get crazy on the run, Dexter Lawrence is like so good at pass rushing that he's not someone you have to have as just like a designated run stopper. I think Mark Caldwell could end up filling that spot if necessary.
I like that a lot.
All right, and then 154 here. Kyle Williams is still there, which kind of blows my mind. I know we do have a lot of receivers, but he is pretty solid in terms of value. I think they still have a need at running back as well. And round 5 to me is a perfect sweet spot for this sort of draft. I do like Monungai, but that would be a lot of that would be quite a reach. Trevor Etienne, Jarquez Hunter, they're both there. Let's see where Etienne is. I think he's pretty high, actually.
Yeah, on the Jack Lichtenstein thing, I think he was around like 200.
Oh, okay, yeah, I am very incorrect. He has fallen from 123 to 160. So,
oh, okay.
I mean, 160 is still to me not terrible.
No,
at least the 154 spot.
I mean, they have Devin Singletary. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, their safety needs aren't really immediate. Ty Robinson is there if you want to double dip. I think he's pretty solid.
I've picked him up in a few of my mocks. Yeah, I don't know why he is there, but I think he has a decent big board ranking from
yeah, he's 101. Yeah, so this would be good value, I think.
Yeah, this is what I love. I love getting like a solid player that might have slipped, a valuable position. Like I'm looking at the left side of my graphic there. That and this being such a deep year for T5 or for defensive tackles, I just don't know how every team doesn't draft two.
Yeah, no, exactly, because it's like just throw darts and see what sticks, and whenever you're just drafting one, you are counting on that person to be successful. And if they're not, a lot of bad things could happen, especially if you're already weak at that position. But when you're drafting multiple, you are all of a sudden diversifying your assets where if one doesn't work out, you're not going to be like completely screwed. And if both work out, that's awesome. That's a good problem to have. And so, to me, it just makes sense to like throw as many darts as you can at a particular position that you need, because if one sticks, that's really, really good. All right, we are in the 7th round, so most stuff is out the door here in terms of finding a ton of value aside from RJ Mickens, at least according to PFF's board. I'm curious where this would be on the consensus big board. But yeah, here we're in the 7th round. Chances are not super high of things working out.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can get.
I could see them adding a safety.
Yeah. He's 202 on the big board, which is like, that's fine. You're getting 202 value at 219, nothing crazy. But to me, it's worth it to just take some sort of small risk like that. Plus you're getting a 90 coverage grade guy, high forced incompletion rate. And I think that's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. And then 246 is going to be our final pick here for the Giants. And I mean, here, let's see who's there. We already went safety. I don't see a lot of guys that I love. Raheem Sanders is actually pretty solid. He's someone that Sam Brookhouse talked about last episode.
Yeah. I like him too.
Yeah.
He has a decent – I've picked him up a couple mocks. He, I think, has like somewhere in the hundreds.
Yeah. 177 is his current rank. He peaked at 111, I guess earlier in the year. So I'm not sure what happened that caused his stock to fall, but I think people tend to, I guess overestimate things like the combine, things like the interviews, because a lot of times it's, it's like if you have this need and if you're getting value, to me, it's just worth it almost every time. All right, and then let's see what we
Exciting.
got here. It looks like they like their draft a lot. So, I mean, getting
Slow
value and
reveal.
sticking to the big board, yeah, like that to me is pretty good. Getting a lot of A's here, A plus with
Still
RJ
going.
Mims.
Still nice.
Yeah, overall A grade. I think that was great because it's like we can talk about scouting, we can talk about all of these football terms, but the thing that I think the Eagles do so well is they do what's obvious. I don't know if you've noticed that, but whenever I'm watching the draft every year, it's like, wait, this guy fell. Oh, the Eagles are going
Mm-hmm.
to get this guy. Like that's how it is every single year. And this would be a dream scenario for the Giants if something like this happened. But I think this would be perfect for them. That like you're getting tackles, you're getting your quarterback of the future, you're getting two incredible athletes with Travis Hunter and Savon Ravel. And yeah, to me, you're just getting guys who fell and you're making the obvious choices here. And so I think Giants would get significantly better if they were to have a sort of draft like this. I don't know if it'll actually happen, but yeah, I think this is super fun so far.
Love it. I'm a Giants fan now. Let's go.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the third place finishing team, and that is the Cowboys. So they really got like hit with the injury bug a lot more than most of the other teams. But despite all of that, they had, I guess, a little bit more of an active free agency than they did like the seasons before. Probably my favorite move was one they made before free agency opened, and it was the re-signing of Osa Odigizua, the defensive tackle, who's been with them for a few years now. You're getting him at 4 years, $80 million. He was on par with a guy like Milton Williams, who signed for $26 million a year. And I'm not sure exactly what of that is guaranteed. I think it's like $50 million for Osa, but yeah, I think great value there. Aside from that, their free agency was relatively quiet, but I do like the concept of adding Javonte Williams, who was not, amazing in his time with the Broncos, but he was someone who was pretty rock solid, and you're just throwing darts at that position while you are potentially getting one in the draft. Do you have any big takeaways from how the Cowboys have operated in free agency?
Yeah, they're just bare. I think the Odigizua pick was good, or the re-signing, but I still think that they're unhappy with Mozzie Smith, and they want to address the position. So I think I'll have them doing something like that in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and wide receiver, so when I look at the chart that I made, like it goes from like CeeDee Lamb making more than 100% of the top 5 APY to Jalen Tolbert, who's making like, I don't know, like less than 20%, it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Jonathan Mingo, I have on this as making like the league minimum. And I could have done this a different way. I kind of maybe regret that, but it just got too tricky. So,
Yeah.
but in this instance, like the value that they have invested in him is probably closer to like that. I think it was a third round pick that they gave. So it's probably closer to Tolbert. His little Tetris bar there. But like, I think we talked about this offline, not this, but like, like if these are like big bars and long and short bars, like I think that the Cowboys really need to find a bar of a wide receiver that's going to bridge the gap between CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert. And so like, a solid number 2 would go a long way for them.
Yeah, I agree. And most notably with the Cowboys, you're paying Dak Prescott close to the top of the league. As you can see with the chart, it's above the top 5 APY at the $60 million. It's actually at the very, very top of the entire graph. And then with CeeDee Lamb, he's getting paid more than that as well. And so you are paying these guys either market rates or above market rates. And so, yeah, like you mentioned, it's really important to find that value where you can, because you're not getting surplus value from Prescott or Lamb, who are both great players, but you're paying them a lot of money. And so we have to find areas where we can get the quality of play at a high level of cash, but we don't have to pay that guy at least right away. And the draft is the best way to do that, especially at these premium positions. And so I'm ready to run another mock.
Let's go.
All right. So we are switching here to the Cowboys. They're picking 12th overall. And I think this could definitely be trade down territory, barring some sort of like catastrophic fall for a really, really good guy. But let's just go ahead and sim away. And let's see.
There he is. Let's go.
Ted
I was gonna say I've had him. He falls to me when I've done the Cowboys twice.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so. I think he'd be such a fun pairing with CeeDee Lamb because Tet is a big-bodied guy. CeeDee Lamb is not as big-bodied of a guy, but CeeDee Lamb is amazing in the slot, and Tet is someone who's huge, and so he can play that sort of X receiver role, even though some people do like him as a big slot. I like him a lot. I also like the concept of trading down, but I'll leave it up to you. Do we take Tet, we take our value here, or do we trade down and potentially get other value elsewhere?
Trading down is probably a good idea. Mm-hmm. But I think Tetaroa has the value pedigree. Like the Jack Lichtenstein ranking I saw was like 5. He's well within the top 10.
Yeah.
So I just go ahead and take him. I think that's what Jerry would do. And like I said, they have a clear need for that. And they have a quarterback that can recoup the value. Yeah. This is something I see some people saying, if you have a good quarterback, you don't necessarily need to provide them with a high investment at a wide receiver because maybe they'll add value to a lesser investment. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I really agree with that. I again, going back to the importance of wide receivers to the completion of an explosive play, 15 yards or more down the field. It's a lot of that really comes down to the wide receivers, and I just don't think it's right to ask quarterbacks to do that. They can't catch the ball, to keep it, maybe a cliche. Yeah. I would, that's a long way of saying I think he's probably worth it.
Yeah. And it's people do this way too often, but look at the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback, but part of the reason he's so good is because you have AJ Brown, because you have Devontae Smith, because you have Dallas Goedert, who's a great tight end, because you have Saquon Barkley. It's these guys are very good, but the way to make them as good as possible is by getting them as many good weapons as possible. And I think you already have an amazing one with CeeDee Lamb, and you can get one who's also really good with Tetaroa and McMillan. Another thing to talk about with the financials is that if he does hit, with the way that the receiver market has been growing, that's potentially a $40 million savings for 4 years if he does end up hitting towards the top end, which if he does, that's best case scenario. We can't necessarily guarantee that'll happen, but yeah, I think Tet would be a great pick there. All right. And then we have 44. Unfortunately, no team wants to trade down because that's where you get a lot of value, I think. But here, there are a few guys we could take. They still definitely need an edge rusher. So let's see if any of those guys have fallen. Oops.
I also saw Benny Morrison. I kind of like him there.
That is true. Their cornerback isn't an immediate need, but Morrison was really, really good for a long time and just had injury concerns. That's really the only reason why he's still here, I think.
The top 5 APY thing, I didn't mention this before, but it's to the extent that it's an investment. One of the first things I want to look at when I'm looking at it is is this a good investment?
Yeah.
So to the extent that they're happy with that Trayvon Diggs contract, maybe they're happy with this. I think when we get to the Commanders, this applies to Daron Payne. Mm-hmm. But if they're saying maybe this isn't the best contract and we don't love our depth, that might make it more of a need, the position more of a need than it may be apparent.
Yeah. And there's also guys like Ravel. There's also guys like Hairston.
What?
Yeah, these guys are available at 44.
Ravel cannot be there. We have to take him.
Yeah. It's I know we took him last draft, and this is something that Tasia and I did on the first episode. Who was it? It was Vernon Broughton. We could get him in the 6th round, and now he's projected to go in the 4th or the 3rd or something like that. And so we just took him every draft. But
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, 100%. All right, so we're in the 3rd round now. Cowboys are picking at 76. We talked about Femi before, and he's in the 60s in terms of consensus ranking. But there are other guys here. I think we're fine in secondary, even though I do like Kevin Winston a lot. We already have our receivers taken care of. Let's check out Tate Ratledge because he's a pure guard.
Yes, love it.
Let's see. Yeah. I don't know if you have his ranking pulled up on the big board.
Right around there. He's right around at 80. Again, the Jack Lichtenstein one.
Mm-hmm. For the mock draft database one, he's number 60. So yeah, I think that's perfect value here.
Love
All right. We have a pretty big gap between next time we pick, but we have a ton of these later round picks. And so really, if there's a guy you personally like, that's fine too. If we want to go with maximizing value on the big board, that is also cool. 149 is going to be our pick here. I mean, Kyle Williams, like obviously we already picked a wide receiver. He is very good, and it is not a need really as much anymore. But
how about
he is
defensive tackle?
Defensive tackle, that's a good thing to address.
That's my default.
Yeah, I think you're kind of reining me in because I want to get crazy. But it makes sense. You're like keeping me responsible here. All right, Ty Robinson, someone we talked about last draft, but yeah, he's pretty good value. He's built like a very big man. He is 6'6", 310. His pass rush win rate is pretty solid. His PFF grades are also not so bad. Not someone who you're expecting to be like the best defensive tackle, but to me, he's rock solid, and you could be getting value here if he does end up working out. I forgot where he was on consensus ranking, but I know it's relatively high, at least compared to what we can get on the simulator.
Ty Robinson, yeah, I think you said he's around 100.
Yeah. And we're getting.
I like that a lot.
Yeah,
I like that a lot. Mozzie Smith has not panned out for them. We know they value the position. It's a great draft to do it.
Yeah, 100%. And we have a lot of picks left. So 174 in the 5th round. I mean, we could just like mirror our exact same draft and get an A ranking. If you want to do that, we definitely can do that. There's some other guys we have. They definitely do still have need at offensive line, despite getting Tate Ratledge. So let's look at guys like Logan Brown, or if there's any other guy that we like. Logan Brown looks like it looks like there's a very steep drop off after he's gone. So let's see where he is on the consensus ranking. And I like that we have 2 consensus rankings we're kind of comparing because, you're like getting like more accurate data with different methodologies. And so I think that would be good. Logan Brown is ranked at 154. We're picking at 174. That's fine to me. If you want to keep him at a tackle, that's fine. He is 6'6", so he's built like a pretty big tackle. But he was productive in college. He's higher on the consensus big board ranking than we are drafting him. So I think this is perfect.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, 204. This is just like a bunch of 7th rounders, I think. But 1 6th rounder and then a bunch of 7th. All right.
So we still need a running back?
That is a very good point. And I think we kind of got lost in the weeds here. We could go with our guy. So we talked about before.
Tried and true.
Yeah. A lot of people like Jordan James. I don't know where he is on the big board ranking, but he was pretty productive in college. 87 gap grade, 82 zone grade. So he's a little bit more of that north and south runner as opposed to the, like cuts horizontally type of guy. Let's see where he is. And like all this to say, as valuable as the consensus big board ranking is, it's like obviously not everything. But what I like about it is that it encapsulates all of these like things that people place values on, and it pretty much finds the ones that cut across the rest of the league. So, if like everyone likes the bend on this guy, that kind of shows it probably is important as opposed to one guy personally liking the bend on one guy,
Yeah.
Right. And then, Sanders was, he was pretty high. Yeah. Jordan James is 170. We're getting him at 204.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah. They may not love the ranking, but we're in the 6th round. So it's not going
to be This is game day. Yeah. So like when I was doing all my practice rounds, I wanted that grade, but now like today's like, like I just want like good players.
No, exactly. Yeah. It's like everything changes when you get punched in the face. Everyone has a plan if they get punched in the face. And I think our punching in the face was, who do we pick first? Yeah, Tetaroa falling in 12. I mean, that's more like us landing a punch on the face, but plans change after that too. All right, 211.
That's right.
I mean, we could almost completely copy the draft that we had with the Giants, which to me was a very productive draft. So if we want to do that, that is cool. We have 4 picks total left. There's a lot of drafting going on for these Cowboys.
Yeah, I think safety is probably a good move. When I pull up the T5 APY, they have Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker making, I don't know, looks like 30% of the top 5 APY, and then Marquise Bell as their third. Those guys aren't inspiring much. I don't think that they would prevent a pick if they think somebody can move. So
yeah, let's do it. This is almost like the Spider-Man meme where like the two drafts that we've done so far are just pointing at each other because they're so similar. But it just speaks to the fact that when you can get value, it's like 99% of the time worth it for guys like this. All right,
100%.
let's see who we have left. We've already gone safety. I did like Jake Majors. Like, you know, he's just someone who's just starting for, I think it was like 4 years. He's been around a while. He's 23. And he's just been a really good center in the SEC for a long time. So good for the Browns coming in there.
Cooper Beebe played some tackle in college, so he has some flexibility. So like, if this guy ended up being like the center of the future, like Cooper Beebe could maybe do something else, or there's some flexibility there to take a center, I think.
Yeah. I think Majors got picked the pick before ours, unfortunately. But
sorry.
No. Between these two guys, let's see what we can do.
Yeah, Jackson Slater was like a huge riser. Like he's a small school guy. On like the Jack Lichtenstein thing, he was like, I think 400 or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So 7th round though, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I like small school guys.
Let's do it.
All right. We have 2 more picks left, both in the late 7th round. Yeah, there's
another wide receiver.
Yeah, wide receiver is cool with me. Andrew Armstrong, he was a really good slot out of Arkansas. He is not very fast, but he is 6'4". He's 202. Yeah, he has a really good contested catch rate, and he was pretty productive with Arkansas. And I was born in Arkansas, so I have a little bit of bias here. But
let's do it.
I think he's pretty good. Yeah. I'm curious about this guy though, Mumpfield. Let's see who's higher. And as much as I love my Arkansans, let's see what we can do.
Yeah, what they probably need like a burner.
Yeah. Yeah, so Armstrong, he's very tall and he can catch contested catches, but he's not someone who can, leave you in the dust. All right, let's see between Mumpfield and Armstrong.
Because they have Jalen Tolbert. He's quite fast, isn't he? Ryan Flournoy and Jalen Brooks and Cavante Turpin and Jonathan Mingo.
All right, Armstrong's 230, and then Mumpfield is 256.
Whoa. 256?
Yeah, there's a pretty steep drop off there.
Oh, I thought you were talking about weight. Weight.
Oh no! Oh, that would be insane. Okay, yeah, that would be crazy. I don't know if you know. I think it's JJ Pegues. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but he's the guy from Ole Miss, and he's like 300 pounds, and they play him at defensive tackle and at fullback. Like he actually took running back drills in the combine.
I love that.
So he's he's the closest we can get to someone who's built as much of an alien as some sort of hypothetical 256 receiver. But 239, we do need a burner. I don't necessarily see one, at least now. But in a future draft, there is the guy from Tennessee. I've talked about him like every episode. Dante Thornton. He's someone, he's 6'5". He runs a 4.3. So he is very much a work in progress sort of guy because he doesn't run a lot of routes, but he is like an athletic freak, and those are always fun. But yeah, for now, let's go Armstrong, despite the fact that we may need a burner. And at 247, at this point, it's just take whoever you want.
Is Sanders still there? Did we get a lot? We got a running back, didn't we?
I think we did. I hope we did. We did. We got Jordan James, but I do think like throwing another guy there is not a bad idea. And Sanders is there. It's like they already have a few guys, but to me, you could practice squad this guy if things don't end up working out. But throwing a few picks at here, I think would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
I like it.
So I think we're going to get a pretty good high grade here. we didn't really do a lot of reaches past consensus. Tet gets us an A+, Ravel B-.
That's ridiculous. That grade on Ravel. I'm upset about that.
Yeah, because it's PFF's personal big board, I think, is what they compare it to. But we got another A draft. See, why are we not GMs? Like, it's so easy. Just pick good players. That's all you got to do.
Sorry, I lost you there for a second.
Oh no, you're good. I'm talking about that we should be GMs because we keep getting A drafts on the PFF mock draft simulator.
Oh, I missed that. I totally agree.
All right, let's cover the Commanders, and this is a team that is near and dear to your heart because they're finally good. I bet that feels very nice to actually have a team that you can root for that does not have a crazy owner and is also someone who is actually competent. It's
surreal.
Oh yeah, I bet. Where's Washington? Oh, they're the last team. Yeah. There we go. All right, so they had a lot going on in their free agency because they had a lot of holes. They did fill a lot of said holes as well. Probably the most notable one is one we've already talked about with the trades of guys like Laramie Tunsil and Deebo Samuel. But is there any move that kind of went under the radar that you particularly like that may influence how we should draft?
Interesting. Not really.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anyone that's going to be like maybe John Bates.
Yeah.
Sneaky $7 million a year blocking tight end deal. I just don't. So they're probably not going to be as interested in those role players. But I don't think anyone else is going to prevent them from adding to the position.
I agree because it's like, I mean, really the only move they made that was met with some controversy was signing Javon Kinlaw because he wasn't that productive in his time with San Francisco, but he was drafted really high, and you're getting him for $15 million a year. I don't think much of it is guaranteed past the first year and a half. You could definitely correct me if I'm wrong.
Two years.
Okay, 2 years. It's like, and he's not super old. I don't think it's a terrible move, and it's like. Really, to me, the Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel moves were so good that you can afford a move that may be a little bit controversial. I also, as a Vikings fan, I'm a little bit biased here, but I do like KJ Osborne. He was someone who was not great his past few years, but when he was with Minnesota, he was like a rock solid wide receiver 3 who would make a lot of big plays when it actually mattered. And I know that happened with who was the guy that caught the Hail Mary against the Bears?
I think that was Noah Brown.
I think it was Noah Brown. Yeah. So you're getting two guys who make big plays when it matters. And, not a lot of that's going to show up in the analytics, but that's also fun, which captures football.
I thought you were going to say something about Jonathan Allen, though, when you said something with the Vikings.
Yeah. See, and it's like with Jonathan Allen, I totally understand why they released him because it was really just like a cap reason. I'm sure they liked him as a player. He seems like an awesome dude, by the way. I do like the signing for the Vikings because it was, I guess, a little bit of an overpay, but you have a rookie quarterback on a rookie deal. I guess not a rookie quarterback, but a quarterback on a rookie deal. Yeah. So you can afford to you can afford to get those sort of, a little bit of a over investment, especially whenever your cap savings are already high now. So let's transition to the chart here. And there's a lot of high bars, which is an indicator that the Commanders are doing their job well, especially with Jaden Daniels. So given this kind of bar sort of thing, do you think they have any immediate needs we should address here?
Yeah, the need that's jumping off the page to me is edge.
Yeah, I agree.
It's towards the left of the screen, so we know, and those gray bars are tall, so we know that the position is valuable. And then there's no red bars. They're all pretty short. So they're not invested in the position. Dorrance Armstrong, I think, probably performed better than people were giving him credit for last year. I think he just didn't get a lot of the splash plays, and I'm fine with that. So that would be the first thing, and beyond that, I wouldn't be surprised if they added a wide receiver or Yeah, like gosh, like anything. I mean, like I think like defensive tackle still is actually probably in play because again, if we're looking at these contracts as investments, not good or bad, like we might say the Deron Payne contract is not great. You know, he hasn't performed up to that level of the contract since he signed it 2 years ago. So I would not be surprised to see them moving off of him after the draft, like after like a June 1st, when it'll be easier to manage his dead cap money. Should he be traded or yeah. So I think the Commanders are pretty wide open and should be looking to add value like at multiple positions throughout the draft.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I always find those the most fun teams to draft with, where they don't have this immediate need. You don't have to reach on some sort of player. You can just like take value where you see it, which is part of the reason why the Eagles have been so good for so long, is that they almost always address those needs early in free agency and in later round draft picks, so that when it gets to these like first, second, third round picks, you can actually splash on players that have fallen that you like a lot. So that segues perfectly into our third mock draft, and this is with the Commanders instead. So they're picking much, much higher, or much, I guess, higher in terms of number, lower in terms of actual draft position than the other teams we've talked about. So this could be prime trade down territory unless someone we like a lot falls here. So let's get things rolling.
Right. Yeah, while it's loading, I mean, like the thing that's interesting to me there is like the way they've traded up to acquire or the way they've traded to acquire positions indicates to me like they want better players than like more players, and like the way that they were doing like that last year as well. Like they did pick swaps, not to say that they had options to do like 2-for-1s, but that's just what happened. I mean, like I think they want. From my analytics perspective, they kind of like higher picks, more quality picks than like more picks. That's just that's kind of an anecdotal observation.
And it's really a bummer because the Lions picked James Pierce Jr. at 28, the pick before us, because I think he'd be perfect here, given the fact that they don't have very good edge rushers. And it looks like no team wants to trade down. So even if we wanted to, I don't think we really could here. Next best available edge rusher, at least according to PFF, is Landon Jackson. He's someone who he's like 6'6". He's massive for an edge rusher. And he tested very well. You know, we got to be a little bit skeptical of like the big combine risers. But in terms of consensus, he's number 50. So that's a little bit higher than we would like.
Don't love this.
The board didn't break how we wanted to.
Yes, I have not seen the board break like this.
Yeah, it's very rare because like Nick Scourton went the pick bore.
Yes.
Well. Yeah, so it's like, man, it's really not a great spot for the Commanders.
I am in knots right now.
I think I jinxed it by saying this is the most fun team to draft with.
Yeah.
I mean, we do get the Eagles after this, but
yeah, that's a blast.
Yeah, there's Derek Harmon. I wonder where he is on consensus because he's
around 30. He's right around 31. I was looking at it, or at least on Jack Lichtenstein's.
Okay, he's 27. He's 27 on Mock Draft Database. So, I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about Harmon?
I don't love it.
Well, and another thing we could do. I don't know where he is on consensus, but Gray Zabel is a guy that almost everyone is projecting to be a guard in college or in not high school, in football or in NFL. Yeah, he's 6'6", 305. His arms are not super long, but he was like ridiculously productive. He moved all along the line in the Senior Bowl and was very productive at pretty much every position they threw at him. Let's see where he is. I don't know if they're going to have him listed as a tackle or a guard. It looks like he's listed as a guard. Zabel's 28 on my on the NFL mock draft database consensus big board.
So, what do you feel about Siobhan Ravel again?
Because I mean, honestly, that's fine with me.
I saw him at 18 on Jack Lichtenstein's big board. I've seen him as high as 22, 20. Um, I don't. I think he's a first round corner, and I think like Benjamin Morrison has fallen, and like so that's somebody who I would also be interested in, but like I just haven't heard anything about him, so I'm like buzz the way I've heard around Ravel. So like I'd be comfortable taking Ravel here, and I know that they value the position. They want to bring from like an X's and O team perspective. I mean, like so they've invested in Marshawn Lattimore. He didn't do great, so there's potential that they want to secure that possibility that he isn't, and then they also want to bring Sanders still from the outside back to the inside to his intended position. Jonathan Jones is better on the inside. They really, really need an outside corner. So I think this is like, and they like tall, big ones. So I think it's great.
Yeah. All right. Here's a proposition, and you can say no. Okay. But what I kind of want to do is we take either Zabel or Harmon, and then we pray that Morrison falls to 61. That may be too risky, so we don't necessarily have to do it because the board did not really break our way. If you want to take Ravel, that is perfectly fine with me. If you want to go a little bit riskier, we can also do that between Harmon or Morrison, or sorry, Harmon or Zabel, just to address like two needs at once.
I would rather take Ravel.
Okay, let's do it.
Like my X's and O's guys that I love from the Commander's perspective is Logan Paulson, former tight end, and he has a Take Command podcast. He's raved about the guy, and so I think there's a possible scheme fit.
Yeah, and he's massive. I think he's like 6'4", 6'3", something like that.
He's like 6'2", yeah, something like
that. Yeah. But I mean, he's a long corner, and he's ridiculously fast, and he's like the most pure outside corner you could ask for. And Morrison did fall.
Nice.
Let's see.
Yeah, something's going on with him. I don't get it. I mean, he doesn't have a great RAS score, if I recall.
Yeah, and it's also like everyone is very scared of the hip because it's like Ravel tore an ACL, and not to run there, but Ravel is also he's a bigger guy, but ACLs typically are not like the scariest thing, at least given the way that medicine has progressed. Hip stuff is like a little scarier than that, I think. And I'm by no means like a doctor or even some sort of sports trainer, but a hip injury, just hearing that does scare me a little bit. So I guess that's why he's like fallen, because most of the people I trust when it comes to like film study have him as like a first round quality cornerback, barring the injury stuff. But that is like a big thing to just ignore, whenever that becomes a big part of like whether or not you can actually be available to play.
Sounds like an Eagles player.
It does sound like an Eagles because it's like they can afford for him to fail.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And it's like, if he does fail, that's not great. But if he doesn't fail, like that's a big deal. Our 61 is what we have here. And we did talk a lot about our need at edge rusher here. I want to check out Josiah Stewart. I don't know where he is in consensus, but I love him because he's 6'1". Like he's tiny, but Josiah Stewart is, can I not find him? Is he listed as a linebacker here? Wait. Okay, he's listed at 80. Okay, never mind. That's a little bit of a reach. I do like him a lot, though. He's ridiculously productive. 93 true pass set grade. 27% win rate, which is like ridiculously high. He's 6'1", 245. I think there's a chance they list him as like a Sam linebacker sort of thing, just because of the fact that he's such a smaller guy. But like you just can't argue with production. That. Yeah, it's like
the other person I liked in this area would be Galat. I saw him on Jack Lichtenstein's board at like 62. So I've picked him up, here and there. But I don't see a big difference between 62 and like 70 or something,
Yeah. I mean, and he's productive as well. 20% win rate, 90 true pass rushing grade, which is really, really good. Let's go Galat. I do like Stewart a lot. Hopefully we'll get to pick him with some other team. But Galat, I think, would be perfect here. And, I like the fact that we picked an edge rusher at this spot, because once you get into like the third, the fourth, the fifth round, it becomes much, much harder to actually find an edge rusher you trust.
It's surprising that they're even there. I mean, like, this is just such an awesome draft. Like, it's just to be able to draft anyone with confidence at that position in this part of the draft.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's a great year to need edge rushers, to need defensive tackles. It's not the best year to need quarterbacks, but luckily the Commanders already have their quarterback of the next 10 years, hopefully, because he was very good his rookie season. Kyle Williams is available, and he was like a big combine riser sort of guy. But he is very good.
On the topic of risers and stuff, Adam Peters, I don't think has a problem with risers. He drafted a few last year. So he's not nearly as concerned with the consensus big board as I am.
Yeah. And so, let's shake things up a bit. Kyle Williams, a lot of film guys love him, and just the stats speak for themselves here. 2.71 yards per route run, really high.
God, that's nasty.
It's incredible production. He's great against the man, and he has a pretty high contested catch rate despite being like 5'11" or 6 foot, close to it. Yeah. He's not huge, but I think he'd be a good complement to Scary Terry. And so next up we have 205 and 245. One thing we haven't done a lot of that we've talked about is the concept of trading down. I mean, this was a little bit unlucky because teams just didn't want to trade down that much. And I think that's honestly realistic with this draft because, everyone says this in like every single year, but the draft curve is very, very flat this year, at least according to like most people I trust. And so it's like there's going to be a lot of guys that could go anywhere from like 15 to 40. That would make sense. And I think Ravel is one of those guys. So taking him in the first round is cool with me. But I would not expect to see a ton of trade downs in this year's draft, just given the fact that the curves are a lot flatter than years past. All right, 205. We do have both of our guys here. Ty Robinson, someone who is much higher in consensus than he is in the mock draft simulator. We've talked about him already, but he, I think, would be good value here. And then there still is RJ Mickens as well. He is very tall. And, like being tall is not necessarily the best thing for defensive tackle because it's all about like leverage. But he's huge and he's productive. And those things are very good. And so,
Kinlaw, they just paid a guy like that. So,
yeah. So it's like, they may go a guy like this, but if Kinlaw doesn't work out, you could have him for the future. I'll leave it up to you. If you want to go the classics with the guys we picked in the last drafts, we can. Yeah, go ahead.
Check our picks again. I always my biggest problem is I forget who we picked, and I'm like keep going.
So we picked Ravel, Galat, and Williams so far. So we still do.
I kind of like tackle.
Yeah. Okay. Now, defensive tackle or offensive tackle?
The value appeared. Now that you mentioned it, I think if we trust, so here are our assumptions. The assumptions I make. I mean, I like, let's just say somebody invited me into a draft room. That'll never happen. But I mean, like, what's the list? What is the big board? The drafts did the work. So if the scouts said that Ty Robinson is like the 100th player, like I'm sitting there saying, let's take him.
Yeah, it's like we picked him in the last two drafts, but that's fine with me. All right, and then 245 is the final pick for the Commanders. We talked about Armstrong in the past. I don't know about who we can get.
We didn't
Jalen Travis. Let's see. Is he someone that's good at tackle here?
Iowa.
Travis. Travis is 149, at least on this big board.
That'll do it.
Yeah. And, as much as I do like Tunsil, he's not super young, and this guy's massive. He is 6'7", 340. His pressure rate was 2.5%. That's very, very low. Not the best run blocker, but he is better at the thing that matters most, which is pass blocking. So, all right. I'm feeling oh, actually, no. I was
Nice.
gonna say I feel another A draft, but I don't know if they're gonna love Ravel getting picked this early.
We're breaking the mold today.
We are a little bit. I think a lot of times, yeah, they don't love Galat, but it's like, okay, Kyle Williams, Ty Robinson, we got a B. You know
I'm
what?
fine with it. Whatever.
I'm fine with it too. You're getting guys who are getting consensus. You're also filling immediate needs. And to me, they're really sleeping on Ravel, who in many people's books is going to be like a first round pick. And so, we can get the C grade here, but hopefully the future will prove us correct.
I do wonder if there's something about Galat that I'm not missing, I'm not picking up. So I'll have to probably research a little more. But for me, it's about positions and value and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly. All right, so let's switch to the Eagles here. They did not have the most active free agency, at least in terms of guys they actually signed. Someone who, they lost a lot of guys. And so that was like the big story of the Eagles free agency. But despite that, they're still like really, really good. They lose Milton Williams. They lose Hassan Reddick was on the Jets. They lose Josh Sweat. It's like a lot of their guys that were part of their like defensive line rotation are guys that are no longer with the team. And so because of that, they got some compensatory picks, but they still have a lot of not holes, but they have a lot of things that we can fill up for this draft. So here, I mean, probably the most notable thing is the fact that they re-signed Zach Bond, someone who was mainly like an edge rusher for a long time, and they converted him to stand-up linebacker, and he's been incredible in the 1 year he's played so far. But given all of that, do you have any immediate needs they may have that we should address for the draft? And while you're doing that, I'll pull up the chart as well.
Yeah, cool. I mean, no immediate need. The thing I'm like a dog. I get distracted. The thing that with the Zach Bond, it's just amazing. I just can't get over it. Like he's getting paid $17 million a year, and if you go on over the cap, it looks like he's like making as much as a kicker. So all of his money is in option bonuses in like future years. So they're just they continue to push the limits in ways that we haven't seen. So I guess like the strategy there would be to say, how can they plan for the future so that they won't have to pay someone like Zach Bond, because they were going to have, to worry about the dead cap money afterwards, like doing all these signing and option bonuses. So that would be like my general thought going into this, if that's a way to answer this question. Like, what can they do to ensure that as they go into future off seasons, that they don't have to rely on free agents, and so that they can replenish, those vacancies from within, and continue to get comp picks and this kind of like later stage of a franchise life cycle.
Yeah, and it's like with the Eagles specifically, they did invest a lot in this like sort of void year style of like timeline management for their cap situation, and it's obviously paid off considering they won a Super Bowl. But I think it's like 2028 or 2029 whenever they are projected to have this like giant dead cap hit from Jalen Hurts, and coincidentally, that is when the new I think media rights get sold.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, so it's like, of course. With the Eagles and the way that they operate, they know that the cap is going to explode whenever they have this giant dead cap hit that they're going to have to probably deal with unless they do extend Jalen Hurts. But they've been just an incredible indicator of how to properly manage a roster. And we can even see with guys like Bryce Huff and Nolan Smith, guys who haven't really worked out, but they're just dart throws. And I would not be surprised one bit if one of them does end up being really, really productive, because Bryce Huff was someone who was really productive with the Jets when he was like a designated pass rusher. And I don't even think he was like a game day active on the Super Bowl, which is really surprising, but they still have him for this year. And he was productive in the past. I would not be surprised if he repeats that again. And Nolan Smith was someone who a lot of draft guys liked a few years ago, and they ended up getting him in like the second round, which just speaks to how good they are at drafting.
Yeah, so like while you have this on the screen, just to continue the point about what I hope people get out of this graph, is just the way teams diversify their investments and like the risk. Like, I think it's probably pretty normal that like if you go to a lot of teams, they're going to have like a high investment, and it's just going to step down gradually from there. Like, but that probably reveals like a high or like a strong link position where like you really want the one player and to be better than the next, and like like have that dependability. Whereas if you're looking at the Eagles here on their defensive tackle, I mean, we see Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Now they were both picked similar spots in the draft, and so we are seeing the T5 APY percentage based off of their draft slot. But it may also be a good example of saying like this is a place where you want to have two good players as opposed to like one player that's like better than the other. So like it's for them in this instance, it's a small example and you could probably tear it apart, but their top two defensive tackles are built like a weak link kind of. Go ahead.
It's with the Eagles specifically, they're known for having all of this depth, especially at the defensive line. And because of that, they can almost run this sort of like hockey lineup situation where Milton Williams did not play a ton of snaps last year because he was such a good pass rusher, and Jordan Davis was a great run defender. Jalen Carter was a great pass rusher. All of these guys were like so good that you could afford to sub them out, and that kept them fresh. And so Milton Williams gets this huge free agent contract this offseason, and it's largely due to the fact that he's playing with all of these incredible pass rushers all alongside him. And so because of the fact that they're built like a weak link system, you can afford to lose one of them and still start these other guys. And so I think that point is great.
Oh, you nailed it.
All right, so let's transition into the final mock draft of the day, and that is with the Eagles here picking at 32 overall. Hopefully the board breaks a little bit better our way than it did with the Commanders. But yeah, let's get things started. And, this could be a trade down opportunity if we see value there. Does anyone want to trade with us? There's one team. It is the Cowboys that want to trade from 44 up to here. So, I mean, if there's any guy you particularly like, I mean, oh, wait, did someone take Ravel? Oh, okay, never mind.
Gosh, I was
going to say, we can't let it happen.
Right.
Okay, yeah, Ravel's still there at 44. I mean, as much as we took him, this could be a good value spot. Not at this pick, but if we trade back and take either a Trey Amos or a Ravel, because it's like, or we could take edge rusher. Let's see what we can get from here. All right, so we're dropping back from 32 to 44, and we're getting 76. Let's see if we can get this done. I think this would be good. Yep, perfect. All right, so we're getting I think this is either late second or early third. And you're only dropping back 10 spots to get a guy that you're probably going to take in the first round anyway.
Should be good value. I like that.
Yeah. Another guy
still there.
He is still there. He is still there. I also like Darian Porter. He's almost like an alternative version of Ravel because he is 6'4". He's 200. He's also lightning fast. He's not as polished when it comes to like the technique stuff, and he's a little bit older. He is 24, but he is like a complete athletic freak, similar to Ravel. But Ravel's our guy, so we're going to take him in every draft. All right, and then round two, last pick of round two. I think this could be a good edge rusher spot, just considering our needs.
Yeah, I'm fine with Stewart.
I like Stewart. Yeah, I like Stewart a lot, and I almost want to pick him just because I like him so much. Like I said, he's sawed off, I guess is the good way of saying short. But he's
sawed off.
Yeah, sawed off.
That's hilarious.
It's a football term there. But yeah, I think he's great. He's very, very productive, and he could be like a sort of Sam linebacker to Zach Bond's Mike. And I think that would be fun. Yeah. So let's
Brandon Graham-ish also.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then, all right, so round three, we have 76. I think this is the pick we got from the Cowboys.
Benjamin Morrison just went. That's so wild.
The 2 picks before that would have been nice. they don't have like the most immediate need at guard / tackle, but there are some good guys available. Hopefully, there is Ratledge.
Yes, love it.
Yeah, I like Ratledge a lot, and he just feels very Eagles to me because one, he's from Georgia, and Eagles love their Georgia players. And two, he's just like a big, mean mauler, and that's what the Eagles like.
So can I say? A few years ago, I did a study looking at the 2023 draft, and it was so it's anecdotal to that, but I noticed that they took high value positions early in the draft, and towards the middle of the draft, low value positions, and then at the end of the draft, it was high value positions. And so if you were looking at my graph, it would be like you're eating a piece of corn. You start at the left. Maybe who's watching? I don't know. I shouldn't use my hands. So you start at the left, and then you work your way back. So high value, low value, high value again. And why I think this is interesting is because that actually matches how the surplus value per pick works. It rises and then falls, like until like the third, like end of the third round or so. So like if you're using that increase to subsidize your low value positions, then you're like every position would be basically maximizing the amount of surplus value that you could get, and you while getting a diverse selection of positions, which I think is important. Like if you want to build to the offensive line, you're going to have to get some players from the draft. Like you can't solely use free agency for that. So yeah, that's that. I just wanted to bring that up because I think he's like the perfect. He's somebody that could work out for them in the middle rounds, and I like that for a lot of people as a result. Like, so I think Tate Rutledge is a great pick.
Yeah, I agree, and it's like it's something we talked about off air, but it's like whenever you're addressing needs in free agency, it tends to be like you're addressing key pieces in Tetris, right? But it's like whenever you're in the draft, you're trying to get these sort of like rows, because typically those are these like long-term needs that you need. And to me, the concept of like trading down is breaking up pieces so that they're more versatile. And I think that's what we did by getting Ravel with a second round pick instead of at 32. You are diversifying your assets. So if you do have more long-term needs at guard, then you can do that. And so the reason we were able to pick at 76 is because we traded with Dallas, and we still got a good player with Ravel. We still got a good player with Stewart, and we got someone who could start long-term or right away with Ratledge. And so I think you put that point perfectly there. All right, next up, we have 96. We could take Femi again. I think he's in the 60s, 70s, something like that. Let's find out. But he is someone who is very good for UCLA. And they do have an edge rusher need, even though we did kind of address it with Stewart. I do not mind double dipping here. Femi's 69, at least on the mock draft database big board. I don't know where he is on the other one, but double dipping at edge, I think would be good here, especially because after this pick, edge rushers are going to be hard to come by. Anyone that we expect to actually be like good long-term is going to be tough. So.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And then I don't know why PFF has the Eagles' needs at receiver. I guess maybe AJ Brown's like not super young, but he's still so good. And yeah, I don't know. If you want to go receiver, we can.
There is a little bit of a drop between the second and third receivers.
Yes.
So like if you were looking at like the Tetris thing, you're like, medium, but that's not a low draft pick. I mean that would be like a second round pick. So it's not really top of mind.
Yeah, it's not that immediate of a need in my opinion. I do like Kyle Williams a lot, and I mean honestly, with the way it's been going so far, I wouldn't be surprised if he falls again, and we could take him later.
Yes,
and juice our draft grade that way. But I don't know if you want to go linebacker, we can do that. If we want to go more with offensive line, we can do that as well. It's really up to you.
We're at 134. I think that guy Seth McLaughlin could be an interesting. He's a center.
Yes. Yep, he's the center for Ohio State. He won. I forgot what the award is called, but it was like the best center award a few years ago. He just
Really?
got hurt. Yeah, and so that's really the reason he's still here is because of injury. And with the way that the Eagles operate, it's not like they need him to start right away. And you're shoring up that offensive line. One guy I like a lot, and I'm curious about where he is in consensus, is Willie Lampkin. So he also is very sawed off. He is 5'11 and he's 290. So he is tiny for a guard slash center. He may need to play center just based on his height. I do want to check him out on consensus because he's great. Like his film is awesome. And I'm not like an offensive line guy, but everyone I respect likes him a lot as well.
Okay.
Oh no, he's 181. That breaks my heart a little bit. But
yeah,
I understand.
I was gonna say Luke Kandra is somebody who I've targeted. I think I saw him on Jack Lichtenstein's board around 130.
Yeah. On here,
I don't know why.
he's 178 on the mock draft database one. And I think he took a little bit of a tumble. I don't know why, but yeah, his peak was 128, and that's very interesting to me. McLaughlin is probably the best value here. He's 134, which is actually exactly where we're picking. So I think he could be good here.
I like it.
All right, let's do it. All right, and then 161. I'll make a pact that if Kyle Williams is still there, I'm cool with taking him. And he is.
And now is like, so like if this Howie's, he's dipped down into the middle rounds, he's gotten his low value position filled, he's ready for a wide receiver. Like,
no, exactly. And it's like, man, I love Howie. I could talk about him like all day because he's so good at getting value. And it's a lot of times with the methodology that you're describing that, you get your premium value positions early because those are the most valuable and they're the most likely to work out. At the early rounds, you address the more like immediate needs in the middle. And then when you're later on, you just take dart throws. And I think that's exactly what we're doing here. All right, we have back-to-back picks, 164, 165. Both of our guys are still there. If you want to take him again, we can. Logan Brown also is much higher on consensus than he is on the mock draft simulator. Aside from that, I don't see a whole lot going on. So, I mean,
Ty Felton.
Yeah.
Did we take a wide receiver?
We took Kyle Williams last pick.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, and I would like Felton if we did not take him.
Gotcha.
But I think Logan Brown could be good. I think Mickens could be good, even though they don't have immediate need at safety. I know there is some like controversy brewing with them and Gardner Johnson. Although, is Gardner Johnson still on the team?
I think he's gone.
Yeah, I think he is.
I like safety maybe later.
Texans. Yeah, he's on the Texans now.
All right. What have we picked? Who have we taken?
Yeah. So we have taken Ravel, Stewart, Ratledge, Femi, McLaughlin, and Kyle Williams. We have not taken an interior defensive guy yet. If we want to go Ty Rob again,
I like that. We don't have a third. I think this might be a bigger need than we actually. I could see them addressing it earlier.
I agree, and it's like
because
that
third defensive tackle is going to get snaps.
Exactly. It's what we talked about, that they like that sort of hockey lineup where they're picking guys and then playing them like in these sort of like sprints sort of thing. And so Ty Robinson, I think he'd be perfect to pair along with the Jordan Davis, Carter types. So that would be good there. All right. We have another pick here and then 168. Let's see what we have here. I don't know how you feel. I know trading down once you get here does not really bring as much value as people are hoping, but it is more bites to the apple. You're dropping back. Let's see, drop back 6 spots, and we can pick up to 20. I don't know. How do you feel about this? You're dropping back 6 spots, and you're getting another 7th round pick.
I would probably not.
Yeah.
To be honest. I have seen some of my studies. I'm kind of wondering like where that break point is in like the 5th, 6th, 7th round.
Yeah.
Because like the contracts stay the same as well. So like, where it depends on like I think maybe the quality of the class and like how lucky you get on that dart throw. So on the quality of the class, I did hear that later rounds are going to be a little lighter this year because of the NIL money keeping players in college longer.
Mhm.
So I would probably in this year, in other years maybe not, but like this year or in other years maybe, but in this year like I probably would not want to trade back.
Yeah, I mean I think that makes sense because it's like if you're a college player, do you have that much of an incentive to declare for the draft, potentially not get drafted, and then run out of college eligibility whenever you can instead like collect actual money, provide for who you're trying to provide for with NIL money? So yeah, it's like it's probably going to change the depth a little bit of this class. Hence why there are a lot of guys here that are not the most valuable, at least in terms of like blank versus consensus. But we are the Eagles, so we got to find it somewhere.
Yes,
And like I think we could go RJ Mickens again,
okay.
even though we picked him in like almost every draft. But he's much higher on consensus than he is on this draft site. And it's not like they have an immediate need at safety, but that's fine with me. All right.
I like it. I could see them using using that safety. I've picked him up in some of my mocks.
All right, and then let's see. Finally, we are at 168. That is the final pick the Eagles have here. Logan Brown is still there if we want to shore up offensive line again. We picked Ratledge, we picked McLaughlin. Logan Brown could be a potential like backup swing tackle if we do need that. Because Lane Johnson's very good, but he also is getting a little bit older. And while the chances of Logan Brown working out are not very high, they are non-zero. And so, I mean, I think Logan Brown could work, even though we did pick him in a lot of other drafts as well.
They have Trevor Keegan as a backup left tackle. I don't. He must have been a draft pick later rounds. I don't think he's preventing them from adding another one.
That is true. There is one guy though that is calling my name like the Joker mask.
Okay. Dante. Yes, you said.
Yeah. So it's the guy we talked about before. It's not like we have an immediate need at receiver. But if there is any team that can let this guy wait in the wings and then potentially be very scary if he can actually learn how to run routes, it is the Eagles. He's 6'5". He runs a 4.3 40-yard dash. It is a flat 4.3, which is very, very high. His yards per route run is really efficient, but that is largely due to the fact that he is running go routes. He's running like a few hitches. It's not very diverse, but his physical profile is very appealing. I think we should do it. I think we should do it.
Yeah.
All right.
That's a very Howie move.
For sure. It's like just take a guy that has a really high ceiling because if he doesn't work out, oh well. If he does work out, then things work out great for you. So I think we're getting an A here. Getting Ravel, I mean, I hope we've had an A streak aside from the 1B that
they give us. Oh, we traded back this time. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we did trade back. Ravel gets an A-. Stewart gets a B+. These guys both all get A+. Another A. 3 A's, 1B. That sounds like my sophomore year report card. Whenever I'm acting good. Yeah. So A draft grade. This is I think a great draft for the Eagles. It's a very Eagles draft because you're getting physical freaks, you're getting guys at value that should not be there, and you're making the team much, much better. And so very Eagles, and I think the team is going to be much better as a result of this.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like Howie.
Oh, it does seem very, very Howie, which is not great if you're a Commanders fan, but it's just fun watching that man operate. So thanks so much for coming on, Colin. Are there any big takeaways that we've had in doing this exercise? If we want to quote another part of the draft guide, or the draft stage, we can also do that. This has been very, very fun.
Gosh, yeah, I think it is fun. I think I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I think a part of that is the unpredictability, and probably that might be something to be embraced, as opposed to kind of like I don't know, just like feared. Like you can't pick everyone, you're not gonna get everyone, like just hope that things go your way, and stick to your assumptions. that's when I felt like I was having the most fun. Like it was kind of hard. Like when I'm doing my mocks, I'm like, oh, I don't know about this. And then I do it and I'm like, and it releases. And then like things actually maybe go my way later on that I wasn't even expecting.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. So like, I hope that everyone like is having fun and that commanders have maybe a little more fun than the rest of the division.
No, I love the way you put that because that's very positive. But yeah, this was a ton of fun. Your Twitter handle is on there, but for anyone that is cleaning or driving while watching this, why don't you tell the listeners where they can find your work?
It's Mofo Pod, which is short for Middle of Farm Open Pod. And
it's not something else.
Not something else. I live on a farm, and when I started my blog, Too High was like all the rage. So, and I like podcast openingness, community stuff. So that was, but I'm also on Blue Sky at Colin Dunphy, and like I said, I have a blog, and I just did a project on position value, and I've got some other stuff coming out. But I'm just thrilled about your news with going to Sumer. So thank you for doing all the work that you're doing and having me on, and congratulations, man.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a ton of fun, and I love talking draft. I love talking football, and I love talking with my boy Colin Dunphy. It's been a great time.
Appreciate you, brother.
All right. This is Analytics with Asa, and thank you for listening.